So you know how for Sonic Battle, despite it being just some spin-off game that doesn't really matter, they went to the trouble of making a whole big story that was actually pretty good? Yeah, they did not do that for the Sonic Rivals games. This is very much a spin-off racing game, and they're like, oh yeah, we should probably put a story in there, I guess, and they just wrote a bunch of crap up real quick, and clearly they did not really care very much about story in these games. I mean, first of all, presentation-wise, this is the worst by far. We got those visual novel cutscenes again, but these are absolutely atrocious. They are so bad, so unengaging, so boring. It's just really, really ugly. This is the cheapest, worst way that you could possibly do visual novel cutscenes, and it doesn't exactly make you really invested in the story. Fortunately, though, there's not that much to be invested in because the story of the Sonic Rivals games is basically nothing. But before we get into things, one thing we need to touch on is Pariah. You're not using the Japanese version of the game. What's going on there? Well, that's because there is no Japanese version of Sonic Rivals. These games never came out in Japan, and so there's no version available that has the Japanese voice acting. So we gotta settle with the English voice cast, which is personally something that I'm not a huge fan of, as I much prefer the Japanese acting because I'm a giant weeaboo. Unfortunate, but I really don't care that much in the case of Sonic Rivals. Like, whatever, who really cares? But personally, I do kind of struggle to think of these as the characters when I hear them talking in these voices in English. You know, there's always the discussions about, oh, who was the best English voice cast for Sonic? Personally, I really don't care one way or the other because I always prefer the Japanese voice actors. If you ask me, then when I think of Sonic's voice, I think of Junichi Kanemaru. I don't think of any of the English voice actors he's ever had, so having to listen to any of them, none of them sound right to me. But again, that's just because I'm a giant weeaboo. Anyway, on to the story of Sonic Rivals. There's really not a whole lot here, so Tails and Amy have gone missing, and so Sonic goes to investigate this new mysterious island that just has appeared out of nowhere called Onyx Island. And to be honest, that's kind of something I do like about the story of this game, is that, hey, we have an island again that Sonic is going to. It's just like the classic Sonic games. That's something I like to see again. So anyway, Sonic gets to the island, and he runs into Eggman there, and he naturally assumes that Eggman is probably responsible for Tails and Amy having gone missing. And Eggman immediately admits that he did, and he has turned them into cards. Eggman has this special camera that anything he takes a picture of gets turned into a card, and he wants to create the ultimate card collection, or whatever. Sure, I guess, but it's a little bit weird to me that this camera turns things into cards. Shouldn't it turn them into photographs or Polaroids or something? There's no real connection between cameras and cards. It just seems entirely random. And honestly, there's really not much more to the story than that. Sonic chases after Eggman for a while, and eventually he frees Tails, and then Eggman's like, I'm gonna turn the entire planet into a card, and he gets up to a space station where he has a souped-up version of this camera that he's gonna use to take a picture of the Earth itself and turn that into a card. And Sonic and Tails hop into one of Tails' spaceships, and they go after him and stop him and free Amy, and happy days. That's pretty much it. Nothing else actually really happens, just a whole bunch of Sonic chasing after Eggman. I guess the only other really notable thing here is this is the first reappearance of Metal Sonic since Sonic Heroes, and he has been reduced to once again being a mindless Eggman robot with no personality. Great, love that. Why would we want to continue with the really cool direction we were pushing Metal Sonic's character in that game? No, let's just completely forget about that. It's very weird, because this game was written by Takashi Iizuka, who was the director of Sonic Heroes, so why would he write a story in which he undoes characterization for a character in one of his own games? Very, very strange. But that's not all there is to talk about for Sonic Rivals story, because like many Sonic games of this time, we have the typical Sonic story structure of multiple different character stories that you can play through that are all happening at the same time, where they see the story from different perspectives. And these different stories are constantly intertwining with each other, as Sonic Rivals being a racing game, we gotta come up with some stupid crap to justify why the characters are racing each other all the time, and this is one of the things that results in Sonic Rivals having a lot of really stupid writing. It's just like what happens in like fighting game stories, where for absolutely no reason we need the characters to fight so we can have video game for the player to play. So we need to BS some kind of stupid justification for why the characters are racing with each other all the time. when in reality it would just be more beneficial for everyone to work together, because in the story, all of the characters are pursuing after Eggman, and instead of going, hey, we all have the same goal, why don't we work together, everyone's like, out of my way, I need to talk to Eggman first, and like stupid crap like that. That's the entire story, is just people refusing to cooperate with each other for no reason. It results in a lot of stupid, out-of-character behavior for every single one of the characters, which is not great, obviously. But it's a racing game, so what are you gonna do? I mean, you could not have a story, probably. That would probably have been the smarter thing to do, but I guess you want something to motivate players to play the single player. Though I can't really imagine anyone played Sonic Rivals for its riveting story, did they? Whatever, it is what it is. They put the story in the game, so we're gonna talk about it. Moving on to Knuckles' story, he has come to Onyx Island in search of the Master Emerald, which has mysteriously disappeared. And of course, Knuckles suspects Eggman is behind this, and once again, he admits that he did do it, and he turned it into a card, which, now that I think about it, why is Eggman admitting to what he's doing here? Because if Knuckles was like, hey Eggman, did you take the Master Emerald? If he was like, no, then Knuckles probably would have just left him alone. Why is he making things more difficult for himself for no reason? Moving on. While Knuckles is exploring Onyx Island, he gets this feeling that this place is familiar to him somehow, and eventually Eggman explains why that is to him, for some reason, which is that Onyx Island is actually Angel Island from the future. Okay? I mean, credit where it's due, you actually kind of can tell that just playing through the game by looking at the zones present in it. Like, yeah, we start with a Green Hill type zone, but it's a bit more jungly, kind of like Angel Island zone from Sonic 3 and Knuckles. And then we have a zone based on Greek ruins, kind of like Marble Garden Zone. We have a circus-themed zone, very similar to Carnival Night. We have an icy zone, similar to Ice Cap. You know, there's definitely some familiar environments going on here. And Eggman eventually explains to Knuckles, for some reason, that in the future he took a picture of the Master Emerald and turned it into a card, and because the Master Emerald is something that exists across the space-time continuum, it disappeared from all of time at once, somehow. Which makes absolutely no sense, but I guess it's an explanation. Someone should have really told the writers of Sonic 06 that that's how the Chaos Emeralds work when it comes to time travel stuff, because that is absolutely not how they work in that game. And then Eggman explains that he used the power of the Master Emerald in this card form to bring Onyx Island from the future back to the present. For some reason. Why did he do that? What does that accomplish? I have no idea. Also, this establishes that the Master Emerald is capable of time travel, so similar to using 2 Chaos Emeralds in Sonic 06, that creates a whole bunch of problems in terms of what's possible that the characters never take advantage of. But we're just gonna sweep that under the rug, of course. And eventually the story ends with Knuckles defeating Eggman and getting the Master Emerald back. The end. Whatever. Some entirely pointless revelations about, oh, this is Angel Island, which doesn't actually contribute anything of value to the story, so why was that even there? I have no idea. Oh yeah, and Knuckles also uses the power of the Master Emerald to send Onyx Island back into the future. Although I seem to recall hearing recently that apparently Knuckles doesn't use the power of the Master Emerald. It almost seems like even to this day, they still don't pay attention to the continuity of the Sonic series. How about that? By the way, with Onyx Island, we have now a question that I have to ask, which is, does Angel Island no longer float in the sky in the future? Because why would you rename it to Onyx Island for no reason? I would think that if you're going to rename it away from Angel Island, then that's probably because it's no longer floating in the sky, right? And actually, that starts to present a possibility that I have seen theorized a couple of times about Sonic, which is that it's possible that in the present of the Sonic series, Angel Island is actually no longer floating in the sky. Because if you think about it, at the end of Sonic Adventure, at the start of the last story, Angel Island falls back out of the sky again after it goes back in the air at the end of Knuckles' story, and we never see it start floating again after the last story is finished. I assume it just goes back to floating off-screen and we don't see it, but if you think about it, there is no longer a reason for Angel Island necessarily to be floating in the sky, as the reason it was sent into the sky in the first place was made into chaos. He was sealed inside the Master Emerald, but with that no longer being a problem, there is not necessarily a reason for Angel Island to float anymore. I mean, although the Master Emerald is still a valuable thing that people will be after, that's the reason it was floating in the sky in the first place in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but okay, we can go with that idea potentially. And then this would work to explain things like the Holy Summit in Sonic Battle, or why Knuckles is not on Angel Island in, like, Sonic Rush. Perhaps this is Angel Island, and it's now permanently no longer floating in the sky. That would suddenly make a lot of things make more sense. And then, 200 years from now, the island was just renamed to Onyx Island, and then there you go. However, I don't really see this as likely because there are just as many things that lead me away from this theory as there are things that show promise to it. First of all, we have Sonic Advance 2. The Sky Canyon Zone is where you meet Knuckles in that game, and it is very clearly supposed to be Angel Island. Of course, we have no way of knowing exactly when Advance 2 takes place. It could take place before or after Sonic Adventure. There's really nothing in the game that indicates when it might take place. But I naturally assume that any Sonic game takes place after the previous one, unless there is something to explicitly say otherwise. In this case, there is nothing to say explicitly, so we don't know where it takes place. So that could potentially be evidence that Angel Island did go back to floating, but also, even more critically, Sonic X does show that after the events of Sonic Adventure 1, Angel Island does go back to floating in the sky, and we also see it floating in the sky in Sonic Chronicles. Now, those are non-canon, sure, but they very clearly were heavily based on the canon game series, and I think it's extremely likely that they were probably given reference material of what the state of the Sonic series was like. So the fact that we see Angel Island floating in those things that are heavily based on the Sonic games, that to me says that Angel Island probably did go back to floating after the events of SA1. So personally, I think it's more likely that it did just go back into floating, and in the instances like Holy Summit and Sonic Battle, that's just a classic case of Sonic Team ignoring that shit just like they ignored the Master Emerald in a bunch of games with Knuckles. I even more so came to think this after realizing that there's no reason that Onyx Island couldn't have also been floating in the sky in the future, and it was only once Eggman took a picture of the Master Emerald that it disappeared and the island fell back into the sky, and then he brought it back to the present. That is entirely possible. Why the island was renamed? Well, that just happens to stuff over long periods of time, or that could have just been a name given to this island as it just mysteriously appeared out of nowhere. We don't know what to call it. Onyx Island, there you go, there's a name for it. So yeah, there's my thoughts on that. I mean, realistically, let's be honest, they probably didn't even think about the whole idea of Onyx Island floating in the sky in the future and it potentially falling when Eggman took the picture of it. That probably didn't even cross their minds when they were writing this story, considering how so many of these Sonic games are written. But some people still see this as a plausible idea, so I just wanted to throw that out there, present it to you, and let you come up with your own thoughts. On to Shadow's story, which in typical Sonic fashion has a little bit more substance than the other characters, but when I say a little, I mean a little. There is still definitely not a lot here. Story starts up with Shadow getting a transmission from Eggman asking him for help, and Shadow is curious what this is all about, so he goes to check things out. And when he runs into Eggman, Eggman seems to have no idea what Shadow is talking about with some transmission. So at first Shadow thinks this was just a waste of time, but then he gets another transmission from Rouge telling him that something is definitely up with Eggman, and that he should continue to pursue him for a while. Eventually, Shadow gets another transmission for Rouge where she says that she's discovered the secret about Eggman, but then the transmission gets cut off. And once Shadow runs into Eggman again, he shows that he has also turned Rouge into a card, as she was starting to figure things out a bit too much. And while pursuing Eggman further and trying to figure out what's going on here, Eggman eventually shows Shadow that he also has a card of Eggman. which is, you know, a little bit confusing. What's going on there? And eventually he runs into Silver, who explains that the Eggman Shadow is pursuing is probably not the Eggman that he knows. And instead of the two working together to pursue Eggman to figure out what's going on here, they still are like, but I need to get to him first, for absolutely no reason, like I said before. In fact, Silver ran into Shadow earlier in the story, who could have just told him this from the very beginning, but he just stubbornly was like, you don't understand, I need to stop him. It's like, use your words, bro, just tell other people what's going on. That's really the theme here in Sonic Rivals. You should open up to people and tell them what you're thinking, because if you don't, then you just end up fighting with them for absolutely no goddamn reason. Anyway, jokes aside, once again Shadow goes after Eggman, and now he's asking, I know you're not Eggman, who are you really? And then Eggman reveals that he is in fact actually Eggman Nega. And he explains that he is Eggman's descendant from the future, and he's come back in time because Eggman has ruined his family name, so he wants to change history so that way he can be recognized as the genius he is. We're gonna talk about this later. For now, story ends pretty much the exact same way that all the other stories end. Eggman Nega is about to turn the entire planet into a card, and Shadow stops him and gets Rouge's card back and frees her, and there you go. And Shadow probably has the only good moment in the entire story of Sonic Rivals where he says that there's no way he could ever lose to someone who blames his own failures on his past. Hey, look at that. I mean, this game's story was written by the same guy who wrote Shadow the Hedgehog's story, so it makes sense we'd see some consistency there. I'm just a little thrown off by it. And lastly, of course, we have Silver's story, and Silver's story is the quote-unquote important story of Sonic Rivals, as this is his reintroduction into the Sonic series after 06's events were erased. Though it's not really much of a reintroduction, the story just starts and Silver's already in the present again and he's like, hey Eggman, I'm looking for someone! No primer on how Silver got to the past, or why he's here, or what's happening, or who he is, or anything. If you did not know who Silver was prior to playing this game, then you're still not going to know. A product of the fact that this game really does not care that much about story. I mean, fuck, if you start off playing Sonic's story, then he just meets Silver, and Silver's like, get out of my way, I need to deal with Eggman. And Sonic's like, whoa, you got an attitude, buddy. And then they race for no reason. That's Silver's amazing reintroduction to the Sonic series. Oh, this just makes Sonic Rivals a pivotal part of the Sonic storyline. Yeah, no, you could just completely skip over this game and you would get equally as much explanation of who Silver is and what his deal is than if you actually bothered to play this game. And people who watched my 06 story video will know that I did not like Silver in that game at all because of how bad the story was. And this could have been a chance to redeem Silver as a character, but it most certainly is not. In fact, he is far, far worse as a character here than he was even in 06. At least in 06, there was an attempt to kinda have a real story with a character arc there, but here in Rivals, because we don't actually give a shit about story, Silver's entire character is, I need to stop Eggman Nega, get out of my way, and that's his whole character. That's Silver in this game. He's just an uncooperative asshole. And yeah, that's Silver's deal in this game. Since Eggman Nega is from the future, Silver has come back to bring him back to his time so he doesn't mess up the timeline or whatever. But throughout the game, since Nega is impersonating Eggman the entire time, Silver's like, Eggman, have you seen Eggman Nega anywhere? And Eggman's like, I have no idea who you're talking about. But the camera that Eggman is using to turn everything into cards, according to Silver, is made from futuristic technology, and he figures, well, Eggman Nega would have never let go of that camera, so you must be Eggman Nega. And then Nega is like, aha, you figured me out, and then, once again, tries to turn the planet into a card. Silver stops him, and then Eggman Nega himself gets turned into a card, and then Silver takes that back to the future. Problem solved. And I guess it is worth mentioning here that the reason Eggman Nega wants to turn the planet into a card is basically just because he's salty that he's lost and what he wanted to do didn't go very well. So he's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna destroy the whole planet by turning it into a card. This is like a thing with Eggman Nega that I guess differentiates him from Eggman. He is a very salty loser, and if things don't go his way, he doesn't just throw a tantrum, he's like, fuck you all, I'ma kill everyone, including myself, I don't give a shit. Which, you know, that sets him apart a little bit. Normally, when something is going to destroy the whole world, Eggman actually turns around and helps out the good guys, so they're a little bit different from each other, I guess, at least. That's nice. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention during Shadow's story that eventually he also manages to free Eggman from his card as well. He's the one that flew Shadow and Silver up to the space station. I guess it is also worth mentioning that at the end of the story, all the characters do finally stop fighting with each other and actually work together. But it's not really like that's a whole character arc for the group where it's like, oh, we're working. No, that's just not a thing. They just should have been doing this from the very beginning. It's just crap to justify racing. It's still stupid, even if it does end up with them actually working together. Anyway, yeah, that's the story of Sonic Rivals. Pretty nothing. Honestly, I would have just skipped over it if not for the fact that this is the reintroduction of Silver and a couple of issues that we need to discuss. First of which, of course, being Eggman Nega and his stupid-ass retcon that he is now Eggman's descendant from the future. And before anyone even starts with the, well, they never explicitly say in Sonic Rush that Nega is from the Soul Dimension, maybe he is from the future. Shut the fuck up. There is absolutely nothing to indicate that Eggman Nega isn't from the Soul Dimension in the game that he was created for. The way he talks with Blaze implies that he's had many run-ins with her in the past, as though he is the Eggman to her Sonic in their world. And toward the end of the story, when he's talking with Blaze, he explicitly says, our world. And at the very end of the story, when Eggman and Nega are both talking about their two worlds individually, Eggman says my world, and Eggman Nega also says my world in reference to the Soul Dimension. Again, clearly implying that Eggman Nega is from the Soul Dimension. But then beyond that, there's also the fact that obviously, creatively, he was made to be Eggman's alternate dimension counterpart. That was his purpose as a character. I mean, if we want to go with this idea that he's Eggman's descendant from the future, then now his name makes absolutely no sense. Because his name is in reference to the fact that he is the negative version of Eggman, as in the inversion of him, the alternate, the counterpart. There is no reason for Eggman's descendant to be called Eggman Nega, because when the character was created, he wasn't Eggman's descendant. And just like Blaze in Sonic 06, I find it incredibly disrespectful to take someone else's character that they made with a certain vision for that character in mind and just completely steamrolling over that and changing it into something entirely different. Once again, I've said many times that Sonic Team does not care about continuity, and this is probably one of the most egregious examples of it, because think about it. Imagine you're Takashi Iizuka, you're the director and writer of this game, and you say that we're gonna put Eggman Nega in as the villain of the story, and he's going to be Eggman's descendant from the future, and then someone else in the room goes, but Eggman Nega's not his descendant from the future, he's a version of him from another universe. And then, like, what's your response to that? Are you just like, whatever, I don't care, I'm gonna do it anyway? Like, how do you justify this kind of decision? Pretty much the only way that can make sense in my head is if you just do not care. But I care, because this whole fucking setup is stupid as hell, and Eggman Nega works much better in the context of the Rush games, where he's an alternate version of Eggman. And so, out of respect for the Rush games, once again, I have to look at the Rivals games as a separate continuity from the Rush games, because in the Rush games, Eggman Nega is not Eggman's descendant, but he is in these games, making it impossible for these two Eggman Negas to be the same character. As I've said before, I don't care if there's a way that we can retroactively explain all this and make it make sense. The point to me is that when they created Eggman Nega for Sonic Rush, he was not from the future, and so that's it. No argument to be had. He's not from the future. So to betray that here in this game means that it can't be the same character, and it can't be the same canon. And as I've said before, this kind of stuff is just so frustrating to me, because it's really not that hard to just not do shit like this. But they just keep routinely doing it, and it's just so annoying. Like Blaze in 06, at best, this is just a shitty retcon that doesn't really contribute anything and doesn't really make sense. And speaking of 06, another thing I want to bitch about is Silver, because something that I complained about in my Sonic Heroes story video was the Sonic Friend Syndrome, where once a Sonic character runs into Sonic, then their entire existence revolves around Sonic all the time for the rest of their lives, and there is no character that suffers from that problem more than Silver the Hedgehog. In Sonic 06, you know, he lived in a shitty future, and so he went back in time to fix things and whatever. Okay, fine, no problem there. But then the events of 06 were erased, and so the horrible, ruined future that Silver is originally from no longer exists. And, I mean, realistically, if you want to think about it, most likely the course of events of history would be so radically different from the future that Silver is from that Silver probably would have never even been born anymore. Remember, he is from a future that has suffered 200 years of being a fiery hellscape, so if we jump 200 years in the future without that happening, the course of history is going to be so insanely radically different that the idea that Silver's parents would still meet each other, or still even exist for that matter, and Silver would still come to be is incredibly unlikely. And because of that, I really do think that Silver probably would have been better off as a one-off character, because the problem now is that, first of all, Silver's existence makes no sense, but okay, we can hand-wave that away. But then the other issue is that Silver is from the future, and so he can't interact with any of the other Sonic characters or get involved in the story. So how do we get him in there? Oh, well, we just have him come back to the present. Again. And again, and again, and again. Silver's premise as a character originally in 06, that he's from the future and he's trying to fix it, that worked okay in that game as a setup for him, but now as a long-running returning character, that is so bad. This is the Knuckles situation where he should be guarding Angel Island tenfold over, because it's like every other week, Silver's future is in danger, and the only thing he can do is come back in time to try to stop it from happening, which contradicts one of the themes Silver learned at the end of his story in Sonic 06, which is that you can't fix the mistakes of the past. All you can do is try to go forward and make the best of things and deal with the problems that exist now. But also, this is just a really fucking stupid and contrived way to shove Silver in every single Sonic game. I mean, what is this like for Silver? He goes to the future and he's like, oh, it's still fucked up. Alright, back to the present again, another adventure with Sonic. Now the future will be fixed. Oh, nope, it's still fucked up. Back to the present again. Can I do it now? Oh, nope, still fucked up again. His character is just permanently trapped in this limbo of trying to save the future by going back into the present, even though it never fucking works. Which actually kind of has some cool story potential there, of him constantly trying to fix things and it never works, and you could actually kind of do something with that, but of course they never capitalize on that. This ain't no Steins Gate. So yeah, turning him into a recurring Sonic character probably has the worst impact on Silver, more than anybody else. As I said before, Silver the Hedgehog is a terrible character. His story was poorly done in 06, and then he was turned into this really fucking stupid, contrived character with barely any personality. Fuck Silver, I says, and another thing about him that I don't like in this game is something that has cropped up a little bit here and there in my story videos so far, but now I really want to talk about it as it's starting to really kinda be very questionable to me, which is the inconsistency of character abilities. Because Sonic Rivals is a racing game, of course, and so Silver is racing with Sonic and Knuckles and Shadow and Metal Sonic throughout the entire story. How is he doing that exactly? Because Silver is not a fast character? That was the whole point of his gameplay in Sonic 06? I understand for gameplay purposes you kind of have to fudge things sometimes in order to make stuff work, but there are better ways to go about doing that, like Amy in Sonic Advance. Like, Amy really shouldn't be able to go through a loop at all, but she has to be able to in order to be playable in Sonic Advance, but at the very least, they did make her slower than the other characters, and she doesn't curl into a ball, she can't spin dash. They did things to kind of try to make her feel like Amy. Here, Silver is just as fast as everybody else, and actually in the gameplay of Sonic 06, when you're playing through Silver's normal story mode levels, he never once, throughout any point in any of his levels, goes through a loop. And I assume that's because that was an intentional choice, because Silver's character is not supposed to be able to do that. And this is something that you see in many Sonic games, Sonic Heroes especially, where characters like Big and Amy are able to go super fast and roll in a ball and do all that shit. For a video game, I understand it, I get it, and I'm fine with it, but from, like, character perspective, I don't really know what the character's abilities are supposed to be. Like, is Silver super fast or is he not? I don't know, I get conflicting reports depending on the game. And this goes the other way, too, where characters sometimes feel less capable than they would be otherwise. For example, Tails and Knuckles, they're just as fast as Sonic, and they can do a lot of the same things that he can do, and, you know, they can defeat Eggman and all that. Yet, for so many Sonic games, they're on the sidelines not doing anything for some reason, and I don't really understand why. I mean, I understand why from game purposes, but, like, story narrative-wise, it's like, are you guys still, like, super fast and able to do all the cool shit? Because if you are, why don't you help out? Like Sonic Rush Adventure, as much as I like that game's story, Tails in there, he's just there to be the guy that explains all the shit going on and builds the vehicles, but when it comes to the action stuff, it's always Sonic and Blaze that are doing everything for no reason, when Tails could be contributing just as much. It almost gives me the impression that, like, Tails is no longer supposed to be an action character that can go almost as fast as Sonic, which is weird and doesn't make any sense, because that was the whole point of Tails as a character, to be someone that can keep up with Sonic. It's very strange. Again, just them not caring about these things and not really worrying about them, whatever, bleh. One other thing about including Silver in Sonic Rivals that's not really so much a complaint, just kind of something I don't really agree with, which is Sonic Rivals, what the game is about. You know, it's a racing game, one-on-one, and, you know, all of the characters that are playable in the game, we have Sonic and all of his rivals, Knuckles, Shadow, Metal Sonic. But then we also have Silver, and personally, I really wouldn't consider Silver to be a rival to Sonic. The way he's treated in 06 is definitely not that of a rival. They barely even interact with each other in that game, actually. I certainly would not consider Silver to be a rival to Sonic. Blaze is a rival to Sonic, and as a matter of fact, why isn't Blaze in this game? Think about it. If we just swapped out Silver with Blaze, everything would be fixed. He wouldn't be shoved into this game for no reason, and we could just have it be that Eggman Nega came here from the Soul Dimension. Then we don't need a shitty, stupid retcon for his character. Like, literally, the whole thing would just work so much better if Silver wasn't here and Blaze was here instead. And then as a bonus, we would replace a shitty character with a cool one. Although, now that I think about it, if Blaze was in this story, then she would inevitably, just like everyone else, be going, "Get out of my way, I need to stop Eggman Nega," and considering her character arc from Sonic Rush was all about her learning not to always do everything by herself and rely on others and ask for help, that would be incredibly shitty to do that to Blaze, so maybe not. So yeah, that's the story of Sonic Rivals, and if you thought the story of Sonic Rivals 2 was going to be any better, then you are sorely mistaken. This time around, we now have 8 characters, but we still only have 4 stories, as all of the characters are grouped up into pairs in the different stories. So naturally, we'll be beginning with the Sonic and Tails story, where a bunch of Chow have started to go missing, and naturally they assume Eggman is to blame, so they start to hunt him down. And in the process of pursuing Eggman, they find some notes that he ends up leaving behind about some Ifrit, some sort of powerful being from another dimension that could destroy everything. And Sonic and Tails defeat Eggman, and then they eventually travel to the Ifrit's dimension, which is just a fiery inferno, and then they defeat the Ifrit. The end. Really, that's all there is to it. Other than that, there's just a bunch of more characters arguing with each other for no reason, saying, "I need to be the one to fight Eggman," and then they race for no reason. Oh yeah, and Sonic and Tails eventually found the Chow and freed them. That also happens. Before we move on, another thing I want to just quickly say about these Rivals game, but especially Rivals 2 in particular, I really love the art style of this game in terms of the environments. Like, the backgrounds are really nice looking. Like, obviously it's limited because it's a PSP game, but in terms of the general aesthetic and look of these levels, this is like exactly what I want Sonic games to look like. You know, it's got that typical Sonic look of the patterns in the terrain and the irregular geometry and all that. But then it goes a step further beyond what we normally see in the 2D games that are, you know, sprite-based. They kind of just have a background image there that's, you know, kind of vague, and you don't really get a feel for, like, what this world looks like. But here in Sonic Rivals, we have really nice backgrounds where it actually kind of makes these feel more like places and less like video game levels. Really good attention to detail here. I would like the Sonic world to kinda look more like this more often. As for the Knuckles and Rouge story, once again the Master Emerald has gone missing, which, you know, it's nice that they actually are remembering the Master Emerald is a thing in these game stories. But at the same time, this brings back up what I talked about in the Sonic Heroes video, where we have to get the Master Emerald involved in every single story to get Knuckles in there, if you don't want to just ignore that part of his character. And it's just very repetitive that he just constantly has to be searching for the Master Emerald. It's almost like Knuckles was not originally intended to be a constantly recurring character in the Sonic series or something like that. But anyway, Rouge meets up with Knuckles and offers to help him look for the Master Emerald, which of course he's very suspicious of her. But she says that she also wants his help as she is tracking down the Chaos Emeralds for a client of hers. So she offers to help Knuckles find the Master Emerald if he helps her find the Chaos Emeralds, which he eventually agrees to. Of course, Eggman is suspect number one as to who could have taken the Master Emerald, so they pursue after him and eventually get an emerald detector from him that they use to track down the Chaos Emeralds. So I guess Rouge just threw away the emerald detector that she got in Sonic Adventure 2, and also, can't Knuckles detect the locations of the Chaos Emeralds? He did that in Sonic Rush when Blaze was there with the Soul Emeralds, so I assume he can also do that with the Chaos Emeralds. But we're just gonna ignore all that, because what is continuity? I also find it a little bit strange that Rouge is collecting the Chaos Emeralds for a client of hers, because she doesn't really typically work for money, she works for valuable gems. You'd think that she'd just be collecting the Chaos Emeralds for herself, but whatever. On the way to pursuing Eggman, they manage to collect 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds until they have their final confrontation with him, where Eggman reveals that he was the client that hired Rouge to collect the Chaos Emeralds. She actually didn't even know who it was an anonymous client the whole time. Of course, Rouge doesn't plan on giving him the Chaos Emeralds, and Knuckles and Rouge defeat Eggman, but then the portal to the Ifrit's dimension opens, and they go in and defeat it, and the end. Oh yeah, and as far as the Master Emerald, it turns out that it was inside the Emerald Detector all along, which either must mean that that is a really fucking big Emerald Detector, or I guess it was shrunk down again like we saw it can do in Sonic Adventure 2. But again, this is extremely bizarre, as we know for 100% fact that Knuckles definitely can detect the location of the Master Emerald. So how was he unable to sense it inside the radar that he was holding in his fucking hand? Anyway, next story. Next up is Shadow and Metal Sonic's story, and that's a pretty cool pairing there, the 2 Sonic duplicates created by Eggman family members. Unfortunately, they don't do anything cool with it, so the story set up here is Metal Sonic approaches Shadow, and Eggman is speaking through Metal Sonic, going, "Shadow, I need your help, or else the world is gonna be destroyed," and Shadow's like, "Okay," and they run into Eggman, but Eggman through Metal Sonic says, "That's not actually Eggman, Shadow, it's Eggman Nega, impersonating me again." And yeah, this is basically the exact same setup as the first Sonic Rivals for some reason. So Shadow and Metal Sonic pursue Eggman Nega for a while, and they find out that he needs all 7 Chaos Emeralds to awaken the Ifrit, which he's gonna use to take over the world, or whatever. And that's when they confront Eggman, and there's a whole bunch of characters actually present in this scene. Knuckles and Rouge and Silver and Espio, a whole bunch of people are here. Though the portal opens with only 6 of the Chaos Emeralds for some reason, and even Nega is confused by that. But he'll take it, so he goes into the portal to try to awaken the Ifrit, and Shadow and Metal Sonic go after him, and he sicks his own Metal Sonic on them. Metal Sonic 3.0, which is just Metal Sonic, but he's black and yellow. Again, a cool idea, you know, a copy of the copy. Could have been some cool rivalry there between Metal Sonic and 3.0, but they never really do much with that. So Shadow and Metal Sonic have to stop Eggman Nega, and there's a weird thing where Eggman explains that there's a switch inside the Ifrit's dimension that will close the portal. Which, like, yeah, this fiery hellscape, there's gonna be a switch that you can flip that will shut a magical portal. That makes so much sense. So eventually, after dealing with Metal 3.0, Shadow and Metal Sonic do find the switch and they flip it, and now they have a limited amount of time to get out of there. But as it turns out, the Ifrit has managed to awaken, and so they have to deal with this thing before the portal shuts. But they don't manage to do it. The portal closes, leaving them trapped inside, and if only Shadow had a Chaos Emerald, he could use Chaos Control to get them out of there. And then Metal Sonic reveals that he had a Chaos Emerald inside himself the whole time. That's why the portal opened. There actually were 7 Chaos Emeralds present earlier. and so they use it to chaos control out of there. The end. Very nothing, and quite a shame, because again, I think the potential of Shadow and Metal Sonic interacting with each other is very much there, and they just didn't capitalize on it. Oh well. Also, another thing about this story that I don't like is Shadow is constantly referring to people by name. Like Metal Sonic, he says Metal Sonic many, many times, and he's like, look over there, it's Knuckles and Rouge. That's not really right for Shadow. Shadow doesn't really use people's names very often, and this game was written by Takashi Iizuka. He wrote Shadow the Hedgehog. He clearly understands Shadow's character, so why did he do that in this game? I guess it's probably just for visual novel purposes, so we know who they're talking about when we can't actually see them in the scene. I guess that's understandable, but it's still not exactly right for Shadow's character. Lastly, we have Espio and Silver's story, and this one is that Espio is investigating what's going on with all the missing Chao, and Vector thinks that Silver might be responsible for it, so he wants Espio to start tailing him and see what's up. And Silver eventually explains that he's also looking for all the missing Chao, because something bad is going on. Eventually, Silver manages to convince Espio that he's not the one responsible for the Chao disappearances, and they decide to work together to see what's going on. Oh my god, look at that, people actually talking with each other. They should do this more in these fucking games. Anyway, Silver explains to Espio what the whole missing Chao thing even is about, because it seems completely unrelated to everything else in the story. Apparently, in order to reach its full power, the Ifrit needs to eat Chao, and that... What the fuck? That is so incredibly bizarre. So Eggman Nega has been collecting Chao to eventually feed it to the Ifrit. What the fuck, dude? And Espio has, like, no reaction to this. He's just like, oh, that's interesting. We have to stop that. Like, what the fuck? I mean, how many fucking Chao does this thing need to eat? It's fucking huge. They're like these little tiny babies. They never describe how many Chao have gone missing. Like, has Eggman Nega collected, like, an entire Olympic swimming pool's worth of Chao or something? What an extremely weird thing to write into the story, and honestly, it's really pointless. Like, it's just to be something for Espio and Silver to be trying to do, but once they confront Eggman Nega, then he's like, aha, the portal's already been opened, now I'll just feed the Chao to the Ifrit, and oh, they're already gone, because Sonic and Tails saved them in their story. But then he's like, whatever, that's fine, even if the Ifrit isn't at full power, it could still defeat you, and then they go in the portal, defeat the Ifrit, and they manage to escape, and then Eggman Nega is trapped in the Ifrit's dimension. The end. And that's pretty much it for the story of the Sonic Rivals games. What an incredibly pointless waste of fucking time. Also, I don't really love this idea of the Ifrit being in its own different dimension here, because then that means, like, we got 3 dimensions that we now know about in the Sonic universe between Sonic's world, Blaze's world, and now this Ifrit world. But in Sonic Rush, there's kind of an implication that the 2 universes of Sonic and Blaze's worlds are, like, tied together. They are reflections of each other. So to me, that kind of seems to imply that they are the only 2 universes, and there's not like this giant Sonic multiverse of a billion universes out there. But then this contradicts that, which I guess that's not really necessarily explicitly stated. That's kind of just my own interpretation of it, so I guess it's fine. But I'm not a very big fan of it. And also, the fact that the Ifrit is just another fire monster, just like Iblis, it's very strange that they would just redo that exact same concept again. As I said, I wouldn't have even covered these game stories if not for the fact that it is the reintroduction of Silver and the stupid retcon with Eggman Nega. But while I'm here, why don't we do something a little bit fun? How about we take some of the potential in Sonic Rivals 2's story, and why don't we rewrite it a little bit to actually make it something maybe worth caring about? Because I do think the idea of these pairs having their own little stories, there is definitely some potential there. It just is that they didn't do anything with it to instead have this stupid, pointless story about nothing. I guess they managed to shove in the big, giant, epic monster demon thing like they have in all the console Sonic games, but who cares? So let's change things up a little bit. Let's try to make these work better. So let's start with Sonic and Tails' story. let's change up this story a bit to be focused on the relationship of Sonic and Tails. Particularly, let's focus in on the element of Tails where he looks up to Sonic and wants to be like him. He's had some character development since then, thinking that he can do things on his own, he doesn't need to rely on Sonic for everything. So why don't we take this opportunity to test how far Tails has really come from where he was before. So why don't we start off the story with Sonic and Tails doing a bit of reminiscing, with them talking about how when Sonic first met Tails, he was this timid little kid and he couldn't really do very much. But since then, he's way more capable now, and Tails is feeling a lot more confident in himself, and then Sonic could be like, hey, why don't we put that to the test? How about you and me do a little bit of racing? You've come so far, Tails, so why don't you see if you can beat me? And that'll lead into the first zone of gameplay where you play as Sonic racing against Tails, and you manage to win, and so it's like, you still can't beat Sonic. And then afterward, they can have a bit of discussion of, hey, it was a good effort, you came really close there, and Tails could be like, yeah, I did, but, you know, there's no way I could ever hope to beat you, Sonic, and Sonic could be like, nah, that's not true. You know, a bit of a never give up, if you try, you can do anything kind of thing, and Tails is like, alright, I'm gonna keep at it, and hopefully one day I'll be able to beat you. You better be ready, Sonic, and Sonic's like, good luck, I'm not gonna hold back on ya. And then Eggman shows up, and he's up to no good, and Sonic and Tails have to go after him. And then throughout the story, you keep running into the characters from the other duos, and you have to always race with them, and we can actually use that for Tails here. Say he runs into Shadow, and he needs to race with Shadow, and once again, he loses, because his frickin' Shadow, you got no chance. And then after the fact, Tails can be like, of course there's no way I can beat Shadow, but then he stops himself, and he's like, no, that's the wrong attitude to have. I just gotta keep at it and believe in myself. That's the kind of attitude Sonic has. And then maybe he runs into Knuckles again, who also used to be Sonic's rival, and then they race a little bit, and Tails manages to beat him, and it's like, okay, he managed to beat Knuckles there, and then later in the story, he can encounter Metal Sonic, you know, another Sonic copy just as fast as Sonic is, but we have Tails manage to beat Metal Sonic and be like, hey. And this is actually the thing that inspired my idea for this story, because in the game's like achievement system, there are achievements you unlock for racing your rival character in this game, but most of the rivalries are just with the character partner. Like with Knuckles, it's beat Rouge X number of times, or with Espio, it's beat Silver X number of times. But Sonic's rival is not actually Tails, it's Shadow, and Tails' rival is Metal Sonic, even though they don't really have much relation to each other. And so I started to extrapolate how could we kind of do that, and so I arrived at this story. Now at this point in the story, Tails can actually manage to beat Metal Sonic, and it's like, whoa, Tails actually managed to beat someone that's almost as fast as Sonic is. That's some good improvement, that's some good growth there. There's also a part in the game where you go to a spooky haunted mansion zone, which, by the way, once again, love the spooky shit in Sonic, I wish they did it more. But during this part, Sonic and Tails run into like ghostly doppelgangers of themselves, and once again, this could have been a great opportunity where like Tails has to race against the ghostly Sonic, and he manages to beat him, but it's not quite exactly the same thing as it's just a ghost impersonating Sonic. Doesn't necessarily mean he's gonna beat the real thing, but hey, it's more going into that kind of direction. Tails is getting closer and closer. And then at the end of the game's story, when you fight the Ifrit, then he ends up brainwashing your teammate, and you have to fight against them during the final boss fight. And that's really just used as a way to make it so that way you have someone to compete against during the final fight. But what if we took that idea of your teammate getting brainwashed and we actually took advantage of it for the story? How about we have for the final zone of the game, Sonic gets brainwashed, and now Tails needs to race against Sonic in order to beat him to, you know, end the brainwashing and stop Eggman from doing whatever. And so this is it. This is his moment where Tails has to beat Sonic. There's real stakes on the line here. Is he going to be able to do it? And then, of course, we end with Tails managing to beat Sonic in the race, and then save him, and then they defeat Eggman, and happy days. Then we can have a nice congratulations for Tails that, hey, he's no longer Sonic's follower, he's no longer the sidekick. He actually managed to surpass Sonic in this one instance. Good on him. They actually kind of did something like this a little bit in Sonic Adventure thematically, with Tails having to come out of Sonic's shadow by racing him in SA1, but the thing there is that was just for gameplay purposes. In the story, he was just tagging along with Sonic like always, but if you actually take that idea and do something with it, you can have a nice little Tails story there, I think. For the Knuckles and Rouge story, I don't really think there's anything that wrong with it. You just kind of have to fix a couple of errors in there. The real problem with the Knuckles and Rouge story is it's nice to see Knuckles and Rouge paired up together again, but they don't really do much with that. They don't have a lot of flirting or a lot of bickering or anything. They just kind of work together and that's it. So all you have to do here is very simple. Just have them fighting with each other and arguing throughout the earlier parts of the story. But then at the ending, you can once again do the thing where like Knuckles gets brainwashed. And so it's up to Rouge to save him, kind of like an inversion of what happened between them in SA2, where he saved her from falling into the lava. And then once again, we can end on a cute little moment between the two where Knuckles begrudgingly thanks Rouge and they go their separate ways. And then we could do the inverse, where Knuckles looks back at Rouge and he's like, yeah, I'd fuck her. Obviously, I'm just joking there, but something like that would be nice, as opposed to absolutely nothing. Now, the Shadow and Metal Sonic story, this is the one that has the highest potential, as with Sonic Rivals, it's a game all about racing, and what was Metal Sonic originally created to do? Beat Sonic in a race, which he failed to do. So let's take some of that Sonic Heroes characterization into consideration, have Metal Sonic obsessed with trying to defeat Sonic and prove that he's the real Sonic, and why don't we take that a little bit and run with it? We can go with the same idea that Metal Sonic is working with Shadow under Eggman's command, but we actually give Metal a little bit of free will and personality here. Still have him don't speak, I think, but, you know, he just behaves in a certain way where we can tell that there is actually something inside Metal beyond Eggman's orders. The way I think you can portray this is that early on in the story, Shadow and Metal can run into Sonic and Tails, and Eggman could be giving Metal orders that ignore them, we have bigger things to deal with, but Metal completely ignores that and goes after Sonic, and they have a race, but Metal Sonic ends up losing that. And of course, he is very frustrated and upset by this because he just can't beat Sonic no matter what he does. And then you can have Eggman do some programming mumbo-jumbo to get Metal Sonic back a bit more under his control and they get back on task. Then toward the end of the story, we can have Metal Sonic racing Metal Sonic 3.0, and that can be a situation where it's like, you know, a copy of a copy. Metal Sonic is obsessed with the fact that he's a copy of Sonic, and now there's a copy of him, so you can have him absolutely hate the very existence of Metal Sonic 3.0, as it's kind of a reflection of himself. It reminds him that he's a copy. And you can say that Metal Sonic 3.0 is far more advanced than Metal Sonic, and so Metal has no chance against him, which obviously really riles up Metal Sonic. And then they race, and Metal Sonic manages to defeat 3.0 and completely destroy him. And then you can have Shadow and Metal deal with the problem, and then there you go, story's over. But for one last thing, we have Metal kind of like staring at Shadow, because Shadow is also a copy of Sonic. He has all the same abilities and the same speed that Sonic does, and so at the end of the story, after everything's settled, you have Metal approach Shadow and insist that they race each other. Metal is kind of feeling more confident in himself now that he's managed to beat 3.0 to show that he can beat someone that's like Sonic, someone that's apparently supposed to be better than him. So he wants to test himself. He wants to see if he can beat someone that is exactly like Sonic in terms of ability. And Shadow, after this adventure working together with him, he decides to humor Metal Sonic here. And so they have their race. And honestly, I think the best thing to do at that point is to just end the story right there, and we don't know who wins. Alternatively, you can have the race in a tie and have Shadow at the end be like, that was a good race there, it felt just like I was racing Sonic. And then Metal can have some sort of strong reaction to that, but he calms down as he's satisfied with the fact that he was able to get a tie with Shadow, which means that perhaps one day he will be able to beat Sonic. And then you could also end the story there. I think that would be so cool and actually take advantage of the fact that Shadow and Metal are both copies of Sonic in a cool way. God damn it, this game had so much potential and they realized absolutely none of it. And as for the Silver and Espio story, you replace Silver with Blaze and then, I don't know, do something. Ooh, how about we replace Espio with Cream, and then we can have the reunion of Blaze and Cream there, and then they go on an adventure together, kind of Sonic and Tails style. Cream, of course, has a connection with Chao, and you could easily justify that she wants to save a bunch of the missing Chao, and you could even do a thing where Blaze wants to stop Eggman Nega, and he's like getting away, he's gonna get back to the Soul Dimension and escape, and Blaze wants to go after him to stop him, but pursuing Eggman Nega would leave a bunch of Chao in danger and they might get hurt, and so she has to kind of like choose what does she want to do. Does she want to stop Eggman Nega once and for all, or help Cream save the Chow? And she decides to abandon her mission of getting Eggman Nega in order to help out her friend. That could be a little something. You know, Blaze is such a driven, focused character that she's always worried about what she's trying to do and her objectives. This could be a chance for her to, you know, realize that there are some more important things sometimes. I literally just came up with that right now while recording this. I just shat that out. Look at how easy it is, and they just came up with fucking nothing for this game story instead. Well, at least I hope you enjoyed my ramblings about how I would have rewritten Sonic Rivals 2. That was kind of fun. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.